Welcome to the Intentional Randomness podcast with your host, Omobabala Adetuji, aka Bobby. On this show, we're intentional about everything. Hi everyone, this is Bobby on Intentional Randomness, and today's show is a little bit different. So this is me just trying to get the formalities done, and then I'm just here with Sukky, and I'm here with Jumoke. We're gisting. We recently watched a show, and the show just touched on so many topics that we just feel like, we need to really come and gist about this, and we would love to share our conversation with you, Jane. So anyways, so Sukky and Jumoke, we watched the show. You know, we've had this conversation a little bit at home after watching the show, and I was like, we need to have these conversations and we need to document the conversation. So here we are. I think the thing that stood out for me, so the show is was about a couple going for counselling, and then we following their counselling journey.
Two couples.
Two couples, definitely. And the first thing that struck me, even now that I tried to recap the show just before doing this podcast, was the fact that the guy didn't want to go for counseling. He was like, I don't want to be here. And I know that most times men are a little bit, they have like, they're not usually the ones that will say, let's go for counseling. Though in that show, the other guy was the one that brought the girl to counseling, but it's not very common that men would want to go for therapy or for counseling. That's my experience, anyways. Even when we've joked about it at home, sometimes with my husband, like even things that are good, they need, sometimes it doesn't mean that it has to be broken for you to go for counseling, whatever. You can just want to go for counseling to make it better. And it's usually, please, I don't need somebody to come and tell me what I already know.
Yeah, but I think it's the way. But they actually went for therapy, not counseling, because they're two different things, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
And because with therapy, there's a problem, and you've identified the problem, and you want kind of to talk it through, because and that's I think probably culturally for us as black people in code, you want the solution to be given to you. I don't want to talk through the problems. Just give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things I need to do to solve the problem. So for men, they're very logical. Instead of me bearing my emotions, my feelings and all that, let's just get straight to the point. Whereas therapy doesn't work that way. You really need to go through the whole process. Why, how, what. And most of the time it's about how did you feel about this? So what are you going to do about it? Something like that. And most men, I think, especially for African men, / whether you're from African origin and you've been in the Western world, it's very difficult for men to really express themselves, especially with words. And especially when you're in front of a stranger as well. That's another thing, isn't it? That you don't know them from Adam. They're not your pastor.
I would have thought that would make it easier to go for therapy, because you don't know the person. You can just walk out of the place and you don't know them.
Most men are quite guarded. Their therapists are their friends. In
Exactly. That was going to be my point too, because I think most men look at it from that angle that, this person is a stranger. I don't want to be sharing my business with this stranger. You're a third party in my marriage or in my relationship. I don't want to share anything with you. So they have there's this defensive thing that comes up. So they don't want to hear about it. They just want to, we can talk about it at home. Say, come. We can sit and talk about it at home. And it's not going anywhere, because this person,
you're just going round in circles. You're talking about the same things.
Exactly. This person is knowledgeable in this aspect, has gone to school, has studied the art of making people solve their problems. But the men see it like, it is a stranger. I don't want to share my innermost secrets with a stranger. I think that's the main reason why they don't want to go to therapy.
Interesting.
So they have to be. But I feel like another thing that it's important to mention is that the narrative is changing these days. I feel like the younger generation, our generation and the generations before us, they had the problem with talking about their feelings and sharing their feelings. I feel like the younger generation are getting more comfortable with talking about their feelings, sharing their feelings, saying exactly how they feel. But the generation, my generation,
probably because of the awareness on mental health and the maybe destigmatization. What do you call it? Like removing the stigma related to maybe going for therapy and counseling.
And social media has played a lot of role into this as well, isn't it? Because you get to know other people's business, which you can relate to your problem or your issue.
And all of a sudden, you are ready to share your business
and
as
now
well.
you become an expert in solving other people's problems. It's like you've got so many therapists on social media, therapists in post on social media now, isn't it? Everybody thinks they know everything, you know, and in a way, and I think that's probably one of the issues or probably the challenges I find with the generation. I'm still a millennial in quotes, but I didn't grow up with social media that much. I probably got used to social media in my 20s. But you've got the generation who actually probably right from age 9, 10, you know, they grew up with internet, with social media and stuff like that. So it's kind of their life like an open book, constantly in the public eye. So going to a therapist is not a big deal because it's just one person. But what about what I put on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, everything? People know everything about me. So it's kind of very difficult to balance that, isn't it? For some of us who we don't like the public eye, you don't want people to know your business. Probably the best person you'd rather be comfortable with probably be your pastor. And if you remember in that show, that was what one of the guys said. I would rather go to a pastor rather than go to a therapist.
I read a comment. Somebody was saying he thinks his pastor will support him. That's why he wants to go to the pastor because it's usually more.
But also, you kind of feel that the pastor will give you the right advice because they're talking from, in quotes, from the lens of God and all that. But the reality is all these things are human flaws, isn't it? Even the pastor you've gone to speak to probably have got issues in his own relationship as well that he doesn't even know what to do. So
I find that if you sit, I feel like if you're sitting with a therapist or a counselor, whatever you call it, and you know that they have like the right education, the right training, it's like going to a doctor. You get you talk through the problem, but then you know that they will come from a very objective point of view. Whereas sometimes I feel like, a person might be a bit subjective sometimes.
I read somewhere, I think we're talking about social media. I read somewhere where somebody described therapy as exercise for the mind. The same way you exercise your body, you put food in your body, the same way when you're sick, you use medicine. Your mind also needs a little bit of sharpening. That if you can't resolve stuff by yourself, it's best that you go to somebody else that can help you see it from other angles and help you to like kind of arrange your thought, like it's an exercise.
Brings clarity
with this social media thing. The people that grew up with social media, it's easy for them to share their meals, it's easy for them to share the clothes they're wearing, where they're going. So the relationship is just another thing to share on social media. So they live through each other. They, that's why you find some people living a separate life from what they are doing on social media compared to what they are, well, who they are in real life.
Because I was coming to that as well. Another thing that came up, like in the show, was the idea of, you're trying to, like, this idea that we're always trying to portray an image. This is me, I'm so busy, I'm a business person, I'm so busy, and everybody's so busy on social media. Everybody is a celebrity, everybody is well dressed, everybody is in some kind of, I know these days that I have Instagram because of the podcast, I see people put a picture of themselves and they have to write air by, close by.
Exactly.
Are we on the red carpet or something? Everybody's clothes is designed by someone. The hair is made by someone. And I'm thinking, is this for real?
Yeah. And that's the thing. So imagine the people that share that. Talking about their relationship with somebody else. I'm talking about the generation after us now. It's nothing. But our generation, we didn't grow up with social media. We didn't grow up with sharing the meal that you had for snack time, or we didn't grow up like that. So it's harder for the men in this generation and the generation before us it's harder for them to talk to a therapist. It's harder for them to go for counseling. I think people generally go for counseling before marriages. That one, everybody's used to that.
Yeah.
But the actual therapy, when you start living together, people of different backgrounds coming together to be a family, it's harder. And then it's difficult for them to then go back to a therapist and say, okay, we're having financial problems. She spends a lot of money. I don't like spending money, and here we are. Please help us. So
but I think a lot of families or couples would probably benefit from therapy or counseling once in a while, just to check in. The same way you go for a doctor's checkup, it should be normal to go in once in 3 years, or once in, I don't know, whatever works for you, 5 years. Or we're just checking in, because sometimes it's easier to talk to a stranger and explain how you're feeling, and maybe to the person themselves. I don't know. Maybe it should be the other way. It should be easier for you to talk to your spouse, but it's not always like that.
Yeah.
But
I was gonna say, because, well, if you're going to therapy by yourself, it's easier because you're making that decision for yourself.
Yeah.
But when another person is involved, you always have to take that into consideration as well, because, like, look at what happened eventually in the show. The mere fact that the guy felt that he was kind of
forced,
or he had to. He didn't get much from it because and that's the thing, like, going for therapy, you really need to prepare yourself. Are you ready to be vulnerable? Are you ready to go through the process? And I think most of the time, ignorance is not an excuse, because you can't just walk into a situation to say, okay, I was asked to come, and here I am, not knowing fully well what you're going to get yourself into. So by the time some of these things were coming out, he was just shocked because he wasn't expecting the way the whole thing, and I think that's where, like I said earlier, the fundamental issue, I personally, especially with one of the couples whereby the guy was resistant to the therapy thing, was that for me, the girl herself, there were a lot of issues that needed to be ironed out before they even come to therapy, because although she identified that there was issues, or there were issues in the relationship, but also it's understanding that relationships are about communication as well. So if you're going to bring somebody to therapy, probably there should have been, like, how do you explain it, like something you have to discuss properly.
But imagine if you can't get that discussion through, and the only thing you can get through is, okay, let's go meet someone. But okay, yeah, I'll go with you, because they won't listen to all this pre-discussion that you're talking about.
Yeah, but
in our case, that was
what would be the outcome as well, because eventually we knew what happened. Eventually, at the end of it, everybody was separately.
I feel like, but there are people that go for therapy and they're reluctant in the beginning, but then later they become open to it when they see that it's one thing to just be, I don't know, to just be anti everything, think that you know it all. Because I think one thing that therapy can do is to actually help you to see what the other person has been saying that you've not heard for maybe months or years. Because we have that tendency as human beings to maybe take each other for granted, and sometimes it's when you're talking to somebody else that you now say, okay, I get your point, this is what I didn't understand before. And having that trained person in to mediate is like a referee. This is what Bobby's trying to say, oh no, this is what Sukky is trying to say, helps.
But not in all cases. The reality is that not everybody will go to therapy and find it useful. Because we're all different. That's another thing.
Probably because if you go in not even being open, you will not get anything from it.
No,
just like anything else in life. But if you somehow along the line, okay, I'm here now, let me just make the best of this, you will get something out of it. But if your mind is closed, you will not get anything. So hopefully in the future we'll see men less resistant to therapy. Open for that.
Watching this show brought up like a couple of interesting points that I thought that, oh wow, people are actually this is what people are going through, like living together and trying to figure out your finances, and somebody feeling like they are taking care of the whole family, and while they are not doing anything. How do you cope with that? What do you do?
yeah, especially because in the beginning it was like, I bring the money in, and then at the end of the show we had, no, I was taking 80% of it anyways. It wasn't. It was just like an illusion that you're taking care of everything, but you weren't really doing that. It goes back to the math, isn't it?
But that was where I said there was issue with the lady, especially with the other couple was saying like, what was your definition of the relationship you're getting into, isn't it? Because the guy has already set he knows what he's doing. Like I was saying right from the beginning, if you looked at the guy who actually, because there are two couples, isn't it? There's the other one who are quite immature, and there's one that they're more about, the guy with ladies with issues and all that. What I was trying to say is that the lady, the perception of I right from the beginning, the guy saw the relationship as a business transaction. So you do your part, I do my part, and everybody's okay. And that's what I always tell ladies. Men are very logical in their thinking. Women are very emotional. So at times you need to take the emotions out at times, and it's very difficult for a woman to look at it from that perspective, because you feel like, oh, this guy is using me, but the guy is not using you. The guy is just being logical, because the reality is he sees himself as the provider in quote. But and that's the thing about guys, they want you to be explicit. So I'm a provider, providing what? But and even the girl, you remember the girl kept saying, he takes care of me, and I'm like, okay, what exactly, how does it take? Because if you're looking at it from the financial part of view, or probably it helps me with some, but by the time they started breaking the whole thing down, I'm thinking it's not a provider. I don't think that's the definition of a provider. That's what
and that's the like where Sukky was starting from, like okay, you're trying to figure out your finances and you're not married and all of these things. I feel like just because there is no official commitment from the beginning, it makes everything so gray. Because you've moved together, but what are you combining finances now? Are you still single? Are you independent? Exactly. Can you spend your money the way you want, or can you, that kind of
because that
gray area that you
confuses me. Like, okay, are you deciding that you don't want to get married and you just want to be in a relationship and just live together? So in that case, then you need a therapist to help you discuss that. Okay, are we going to then pay for everything 50-50, so that in case we do break up, then you just take your 50 and go.
I don't even think you need a therapist for that. I think that should have been clear right from the beginning. Like,
and that is exactly what was interesting for me too. When I started and I was watching, I was like, okay, I don't claim to understand this whole cohabiting thing. And I'm not necessarily I'm not condemning people who do it, but it just sounds like a lot of confusion to me.
Yeah, but some people are very pragmatic about it. I think with them, there's just shows a level of immaturity from the girl, or probably there's there's assumption right at the beginning of the relationship. Okay, this guy.
Yes, the issue of assumption. I think that is something that is a big stuff, right? With people in relationships, assumptions. And what are you in?
And I think from personal experience and I've been involved or conversing with people and talking about issues like this, goes back to women are very emotional. When we get into relationship, we go into relationship with our head, with our hearts, not with our heads. So some of the things that we're supposed to iron out right at the beginning, we're just so much in love with the guy that everything is just yes, saying yes when you're meant to say no, or not thinking through, making yourself accountable, having people around you who make you to be objective in your thinking. Because if you had said, oh, I'm moving in with a guy, the first question, if you've got friends or people around you are accountable, the first question to be asking you, who's going to pay the rent, how are you going to do this? These are the things that you start thinking of. Okay, oh yeah, it's true. So that when time you meet the guy next time, it's about, okay, so how is it going to work in terms of paying rent and all that?
Yeah, because practically.
Yeah, and I think it also starts with how we train our children as well in terms of financial independence and education right at the beginning as well. Because I've got friends who live with their partners and all that, and it's very, when they talk about their their finance, they're very structured. It's very structured. It's not this mishmash thing is very structured because everybody knows what they're doing. You know, it's all sorted and all that. And even in every relationship, marriage relationship, these are the things you really need to talk about because there's no.
Yeah, I was going to come to that. That even in a marriage relationship, even in like you have the commitment, you have the till death do us part, and hopefully if you're married to somebody that has a good has a fear of God, they're not planning to cheat on you or do something crazy. You still need to talk about finances. You need to talk about how you're going to work together. You need to talk about like chores and roles. Now we have people shouting all over gender roles. I don't want to be in a relationship where there are gender roles. I don't want to be the only one cooking, and I don't want, and all of this. And that means you have to do a lot of talking. I mean, in the old generation, everybody just knew their place. You cook, I bring the money. You do this, I do this. But these days, with all our independence and all these things and all the different constellations and different combinations that you have in families, you really need to sit down and talk. What how are we going to do this?
Exactly. and I think right from the guy, when I was watching that show, that particular guy wants to have this
sit-at-home wife.
African mentality, but not being able to the traditional mentality of I'm the provider, but you don't want to be committed, you don't want to sacrifice, you don't want to. So because for me, if I've been a Christian, there's no way you can be a provider when you're not actually married. I'm sorry. What are you? What is the context of what are you providing for? Because it's only one person you're providing for in quotes, really. So and the reality of it is, as the show went on, you realize that he wasn't actually providing anything. He was just more or less like, and that's the reality because the word was used carelessly. And for me, I had an issue with that because I've never heard that word provider in that context.
As a leader. The part that was so funny was, oh, Mr. Man, what do you do? I'm the provider. I was like, what? Is that like a profession? That's a whole job on its own.
I think the way he said it, he talks to his own upbringing as well. Because I think he has this idea that the man has to be the provider. The man has to be, I don't want to use the word head, but I think you grew up with, I have to...
breadwinner maybe is the word.
And I have to have a wife that sits at home, waits for me, comes back and appreciates me for bringing money, even
but
if I don't
not
spend
your wife
time
yet.
with her.
That's the thing,
No. I know, but that's the idea he had in his head watching the show. He's like, oh, you have to sit at home, wait for me, and when I come, you appreciate that I'm with you. Even if I'm not spending time with you, just appreciate that I brought the money and I'm here. You should
and you guys are touching on something very important. The idea that a lot of, at least statistically, looking at the way it is, we all live in the West. I don't think there's someone out there who can say, a guy that can say, I'm single-handedly just taking care of everything and we don't need a second income. I think it's very it can happen, but maybe if you're really extremely rich. But most times, the people that have this mentality, like the guy in this show, I'm providing, it's just all in their heads. Practically, when it comes to the numbers, you're not doing all of that because the math does not add up. So, like this idea in your head, I'm the provider. Where does it the lady is working? I used to say to people that say, but back in the days, the women were working and the men were providers. I used to say, even that is a fallacy, because if we look, I would use Nigerian context. A lot of these women went to the market. They were traders. Some of them were farmers in the east of Nigeria. The Igbo women, they were farmers. So what are we talking about? Women have always contributed to the home, one way or the other.
Yes, they have. And talking about the West, that you mentioned, that the concept of the provider doesn't really work here, I feel, because if you want to do stuff, if you want to approach the bank to do stuff, or if you want to buy a house, if you want to buy cars, you stand a better chance if there's two incomes in the family.
Yeah, at least in the middle class, unless you are maybe Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos.
An entrepreneur that is earning way, But if you are a 9-to-5, like most of us are, you stand a better chance if you have two incomes. So this concept of provider thing, I think it's like I said, it's an ideology that we are so in love with. We romanticize it. So much, and it's really you can't, in this present world, it doesn't work. Yeah.
I think even if you're going to be a provider, there are some families that, you know, the wife or the mom for the family will make a decision to probably take a career break to look after the kids. So obviously, because you know the cost of childcare as well in the Western world can take almost half of your income as a family as well, isn't it? So at times, women or men can make that personal choice to say, okay, I will probably reduce my hours, go part-time, or probably stop working depending on your savings as a family to make that decision. But in this context of this relationship, I don't understand that where that fit. It's true. I don't understand why.
And maybe that is a red flag out there that we can mention for younger people that are not yet married and you want to marry, and all you see is a lot of, from the guy as a woman, is a lot of, oh, I'm doing this. You need to really begin to ask practical questions. Can we even pinpoint exactly what you're doing? Can we pinpoint exactly how you contribute to this relationship? Or, I'm so in love, it takes care of me. Can you pinpoint how does it take care of you? What does it actually do?
And you remember there was a statement he made as well that said that a guy doesn't disclose how much he's got.
He doesn't sit down with the wife and tell her everything that he makes. Who does that?
And for me, that was already a red flag. Like if you have a guy who's got that mentality, of course you need to know that there's something not right. And you know, there's some men that it will take time. Let's be realistic to trust the woman, probably because the woman is very flamboyant, so they know that if I declare something, she wants to spend it. Yeah, fine, but it takes time and, you know, experience and time for you to for them to trust the woman. But if a guy is already having that mentality 3 years into your relationship, then it's already a red flag for you to ask yourself, do I really want to go further in this relationship? Do I? Because let me tell you something. I know some people whereby so similar to that guy that they're actually making money, but they won't spend it. They're investing in risky businesses and all that. They won't spend their money on you know, frivolities like flowers, cakes, and, you know, I want to be romantic. They won't do that, and they will leave the woman to be spending money. You want to go ahead, spend your money. You want to do it, but I will definitely. And these are the issues in marriages as well, because the reality is one person is investing his money or her money, and because it goes both ways, isn't it, with the spouses,
and the other person is spending his or hers,
spending hers on the day-to-day runnings of the family.
Of the home.
That obviously will put strain. And I don't think personally this particular guy, I don't think he's that broke, but probably he's investing to high risk businesses and investments and stuff like that, which not bringing the returns as expected, because the lady actually mentioned that he had some investment, but the money not coming in as expected. So it's about these conversations you need to ask yourself, that would you rather, how much you want to invest in, you know, 10, 20, 30 years, or, you know, not getting any returns? Because these are the things that, like, it all boils down to communication, really. Because if you don't ask, you don't know.
Yes.
And assumption in relationship is the worst thing ever. Don't ever assume. Ask so that you know. And that's one of the things that people struggle with in marriage. But you never asked. So how come I wouldn't tell you? But we never asked.
That's why I feel like this thing that we're talking about with the finances is a gray area when you are actually not married. That was what I said before. I'm going
because there is, maybe the guy doesn't feel like there's no commitment for me to be telling you everything, and the lady doesn't even feel bold enough to ask some questions, because it doesn't owe me that answer. Maybe. I know that people that do this all cohabiting things differently as well, they have the mindset of almost like they're in a marriage, they just don't have the formality. That's a different thing. But where you have all these, okay, why do I don't owe you these, or even later in the show, the girl moved out of the house and it's like, she hasn't come home. And I sat down there thinking, come home to what? To what? She's been disrespected. And I'm like, to what? You are not the husband. Like, you're just somebody she's living with. I don't know. Maybe maybe I just have a different opinion. But I just felt like both of you don't owe each other anything. Really.
Anything. Yeah. And that's the fact, really.
Yeah. If you then decide to cohabit, you kind of have to talk about it from all these issues, because another issue, now I'm bringing up another issue from that show.
Go ahead.
the thing with the family, like, how do you then deal with the family if you're just living together, you don't have this commitment to each other, Are you
like how do you see the person's parents, siblings, and all these people?
How do you deal with that? Because the person is not an island on their own. They usually have friends and family and all of that. How do you then relate to them? How do you move on in your relationship if you are... What if you break up? I mean, I keep going back there. What if you break up?
Then everything breaks. Then everything is broken, and you have to start picking up the pieces, isn't it? Just like anything else, anyways.
I think it still comes out to the particular lady I was talking about. I think it's I don't want to say immaturity, because if I say immaturity, it will seem as if probably she was childish. She wasn't, but I would say it's I don't want to use the word naivety as well, but experience, because I can relate to her as well, because at times, there's this depends on your background, depends on the family you come from as well, whereby you're taught not to be disrespectful to strangers or elders and all that. So it's kind of difficult for you to say no when you're even in a very uncomfortable environment or people invading your space. Some of us are not very confrontational. If you bring your kids into my house now, I'm just that kind of person that will just accept it, like, okay, fine, they're only here for a few days or a few hours, I can cope with that. So I might not be that kind of person that will say, hey, what, excuse me, what because naturally, or the way I've been brought up, I'm just that accommodating person. Whereas you have some millennials that are like, no, I mean, you should have called before even coming. Or I've got plans, things like that. So
isn't it? And that's the thing, right? Coming to the issue of like in-laws. Now, okay, the couple in the show were not married, but if you bring it down to like, okay, a real couple, you're married, how to relate with in-laws and expectations. Again, back to this whole issue of expectations, assumptions, and things like that. How do I treat you as somebody that is just the sibling of my boyfriend, or should I treat you as my sister-in-law? I don't even know if there's a difference in that. How you treat people based on how.
There's a difference between sister-in-law and the sister of your boyfriend, because the sister, that's the reality. It says sister-in-law, so you're bound together in law, by law.
Okay.
So she's your sister by law. But sister of my boyfriend, there's no commitment. I don't hold you, you don't hold me. I'm talking here plainly. I can be nice to you based on my time, and I might not be nice to you based on my times. But
and that was the problem. Like in the show, the sister to the boyfriend, or I don't even know if they were fiancés, I think it was boyfriend, was bringing her kids. And she's like, no, I don't know you like that. You can't drop the kids here. And maybe the sister is just like, that's my sister-in-law. So again, gray areas, confusion.
Confusion. Yeah.
And I think
like if you have a boyfriend, the sister doesn't have a right to drop their kids with you. I mean,
unless you actually are nice like that and you don't mind.
Well, if you don't mind, that's another question. But you're not obliged to do it. You're not
exactly.
It's not compulsory for you to do it, and you can choose to say no.
Yeah.
You don't have any, like Jumoke said, you don't have any in-law there. There's no law like that.
But there are people that will argue that even with the in-law, you don't have a right to not tell me I don't owe you anything. Some people have that mentality even in marriage.
Isn't it
when they deal with their in-laws?
As ladies as well, that as women that go into relationship, there's this mentality like, I don't know if it's an African thing that you've got somebody, you're in a long-term relationship and you're already seeing yourself as the wife when in quotes it's not even proposed.
Yeah.
It's not, it has not proposed yet. There's not even conversation about the future, but you've already seen yourself as the wife. You've already seen yourself as, they're having family events. You're already there in the kitchen and, you're already cooking, washing plates, going out with your boyfriend's mom. You're already being introduced to every member of the family when the relationship has not been defined.
Yeah.
And these are the things that when people think, you think, oh, this auntie is very harsh. No, from experience, define the relationship right from the beginning.
That was something that was drummed into our heads. Like, at least I know it was drummed into my head growing up, going for all the singles seminars and everything. You need to define your relationship. We had this lady that was a friend, and she would go to our so-called I don't know, boyfriend's mother's house, and she would, do all the things that I expected according to our culture for the wife. And they were not even going out. And then later on, the guy is dating somebody else on another side of the planet.
Of course it is.
And what were you thinking? What were you doing? You don't even know the relationship with the guy, and you're already being a wife to the mother.
If we start talking about this particular topic, I think this whole episode of the podcast will spend it talking about this topic, doing the wifely duties when you are not even, when the relationship hasn't been defined. I feel like we women, we have this thing at the back of our heads that, if we do the extra job, if we do the extra and show him how
we can be what they call white material, 5 yards of white material.
He's going to marry us.
Pop the question.
And then you cook and wash and clean and dry clean and pick up dry cleaning, and still you won't get the ring. So it's about, like Jumoke said, it's about defining the relationship from the beginning. Don't overstress yourself, because you don't, at that point, you really do not owe anybody anything. Even when you are married, you don't owe anybody anything. But out of courtesy, you start doing these things. You start helping out where they need help. You don't have to overstretch yourself, even as a wife. But
for the in-law things,
as in, you are not obliged. You're really not obliged to do anything. But that understanding is hard to explain.
But I would say, though, that I found it a little bit like when she was like, why would your sister drop your kids with me? I was in my own head, I was thinking, but for me as a person, personally, I didn't see the fuss. I didn't see why she was so angry about that particular issue. I must confess, because I was just like, I probably understand that you don't want their kids to be dropped. But I also found it like, why do you have a problem with so much?
I feel like she was angry because she was saying that she wasn't a good wife. She wasn't dressing properly. She was talking rudely to people. And
then you drop your kids with me.
And then you drop your kids with her. That's, I mean, if you're complaining about who she is as a woman, then you don't drop your kids with her, because that means you don't trust her enough as a woman. So just take your kids somewhere else.
This comes to what I always say, and I probably from my own personal experience, seeing my mom, my aunties with their relationship with their in-laws, and growing up, I've always had this mentality that I'm not going to pretend to be who I'm not when I get married. Exactly. Because at times, it's better for people to know you for who you are rather than pretend to be what you're not. Because the problem is, if you fake it before you get married, people will expect that after you get
married, continue with that, you keep it up.
And at times, I'm that kind of person that I'd rather do something with my heart in it, being plain, than do something because I want to please you. I can't just do it. For me, it's just not me. Pretending to be who I'm not. It's not.
Interesting enough, real life. So I think maybe Jumoke would remember this, or maybe Yinka, another friend of mine. When I had lived maybe abroad, I don't know how long, and when I met my husband, he was like, and then we were talking about, we're going to go home, you're going to meet my mom and all of that. I think I was in Sweden, and he was like, but I would love when you get to Nigeria, please, when you see my mom, maybe just kneel down. That's something we do in our culture. And I was telling him, with my 2 knees. In my head, I was brought up, I understand the culture that he's talking from. I was like, if I start kneeling with my 2 knees now and they think I'll be kneeling down like that for life, I can't do it. Because even when I go home and I travel home on the holidays, I find that my leg aches. I'm telling my dad, I can't be greeting everybody on the street and kneeling down. I'm sorry, I'll bend. And he was like, just do it. And I think I asked Jumoke, like, what should I do? And you were saying, we should not kill you. Just kneel down and that's it. I said, but I don't want them to think that I am going to be doing this for life, because I don't know how to do it. I'll just do it for that day and all of that. But a little bit immature, maybe even childish. But it was a real life, because I was like, I'm not going to start up something I cannot finish.
But I agree with that, though. If you can't finish, if you can't uphold something for the next 40 years of your marriage or longer, You shouldn't
don't
start
even
it.
bother
You
starting.
should not start it. So if you can't
But
deal with
yeah.
this,
And
then
But I'm glad to report I went to meet the parents, I knelt down and all of those things. And I know that my mother-in-law was like, so you were brought up here. I said, yes, ma'am. She said, yes, that's it.
And
But
you
after that, she's lived with us and I don't always kneel down in the morning with my two legs on the ground because it's just my brain just doesn't do that all the time. Even my parents, I don't think I do all of that. Just to say that sometimes you might have to compromise sometimes. But yeah, I do subscribe to the fact that don't start something don't do eye service. Do you be authentic? Yeah.
And people
Be
will respect you.
authentic.
They might not come at first. It might be strange to them, but later on, they're respectful for you, who you are. And I think that's one of the things that women need to understand. Being alone, being on your own, be comfortable with yourself first.
yes,
When you're comfortable with yourself, everybody will, whether they like it or not, or they will come to understand you and accept you for who you are. But when you want to be with the majority, that's why probably because now we're in the Western world, we don't have that issue of this family gathering where you have to go and do your wole and stuff like that. That thing irritates me a lot. When I was growing up,
for the benefit of our audience that may not be Yoruba, this is like when you have big events, the wives of the family, people that are married into the family, they're the ones cooking, fetching water, I don't know what else they do, sweeping the floor and all this kind of funny things.
Everybody.
They're the ones hosting people and serving food and please, I can't even. Nah.
I mean, there's some things you do out of respect. You are in. Obviously, there's no way I'll probably go somewhere where I'm needed to help with.
And then you sit down.
Struggle and sit down. I'm not that kind of person. I can take over the whole kitchen, help out, and do that. But I know that that's a one-off thing. I'm there to support, and I know everybody's having a good time. And it's not good that one person is in the kitchen. And I can do that for that time. But when you're feeding like 1,500 people, you better get caterer and people who can wash.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? And that's I wanted to touch on this issue of not pretending, being your authentic self, especially as a married person, even with in-laws. I remember I've had my mother-in-law come and live with us, and I think I was just me. If I wanted to sleep till 8 a.m. because I'm tired, because I love my food, I slept till 8 a.m. I didn't wake up at 6 a.m. just to impress her. And I think she later appreciated that because this is just me. Mommy, when you wake up in the morning, you wake up earlier than me. This is what we're eating for breakfast, is on the table, everything is ready and everything. And if I wanted to sleep till 9, I would sleep till 9. If my husband wanted to wake up earlier, that's fine, because I was taking care of babies when she was there. And I just decided I was just going to be me. I wasn't going to start living up to some kind of things that I've not been doing before, waking up at 5 a.m., even though I normally wake up at 9. No, I don't. I was like, no, I'll be me and do that.
And be consistent with it.
Yeah.
And I feel like whoever it is, your sister-in-law, your mother-in-law, whoever it is, will appreciate you for that. This is how this, like we've been saying, this is how this person is, and they will come to accept it. And if they need you, if they know that Bobby sleeps till 9, they won't disturb you. They will say, they will even tell your kids, leave mommy alone, she's sleeping. Because they
know when you wake up at 9, you're still going to do your duty. You're going to make sure everybody eats lunch, everybody eats dinner. Yeah.
Imagine if your mother-in-law is staying with you for 3 months. Are you going to wake up at 5 a.m. for 3 months?
Just to impress?
Just because you want to impress.
And that's the thing. You start getting angry.
And you resent them because you feel like they're really disturbing you. Meanwhile, you're the one disturbing yourself because
this life is too short. Why are you stressing yourself? Don't stress yourself. That's what I tell myself. Don't stress. Be authentic to yourself so that when people know, this is the way she is. That's fine. Yeah. And also, one of the points I wanted to raise with that sister-in-law and the lady is that one of the things I realize is women, we are our own downfalls. We are our own the worst critics and all that. As women, we don't support each other, and I think I myself, I'm learning that as well. Now I've got sister-in-law and all that. That at times there's always this, I don't know how to say this, cool way over the years whereby the way sisters-in-law see each other, there's always this rivalry. And I think with westernization and all that, that it's now changing, because you always realize that if I really love my brother, then his wife, I have to, if I respect my brother, love my brother, I should, well, regardless of the choice he makes regarding life partner, I should love that person as well. They're not perfect. They have different backgrounds, you know. They would not be like, they're different from us and all that. But over the time will tell. That's the thing. Time is a true test of character. Yes. It's not. Don't. That's one of the things I realized, that you don't go heavy when people come into your family. Don't go too heavy with them, because you realize that they're still trying to find their feet as well. Yes. Mistakes will happen.
Trying to get to know everyone.
Yeah. Give them time, because it's a practice for you now. Because by the time your children grow up, your boys, and they're bringing ladies, because before they bring them the one, there will be some ones that will come. So you have to practice now. As that's one of the things I've learned now, that probably most of my friends now are in their 50s and 60s. I realized that they don't have the experience, because their mother-in-laws were very harsh on them. So they don't have the experience on how to be nice to the ladies their boys or sons are bringing home.
That brings me to, the issue with mother-in-laws, I think, is a vicious circle. I remember when, like, people will say, I don't want to I marry some, like, there are people that actually pray that they marry somebody that doesn't have a mother. And I was like, how can you be wicked like that? I used to pray that my mother-in-law would just be like my mom, and we'll get along. Because it's much better to get along with someone and have a second mom than to be praying for his mother to be dead.
It's because that's like witchcraft. It's because of people's experiences.
Do you think it's experiences or sometimes stereotypes and perceptions? Because even the people that have not had a mother-in-law that is bad, they already come into marriage ready to be antagonistic to their mother-in-laws or their,
the bad stories stay longer. They linger longer than the good stories. And the
in people's
bad
minds.
stories are the ones that we hear a lot. The ones about the bad mother-in-law that comes 6 a.m. in the morning and wants pounded yam or something in the morning.
Yeah. And Nollywood is not helping as well, isn't it?
No, Nollywood is not helping. That's why sometimes when you watch movies, you have to think.
Exactly. So that's why I do understand people that say, oh, they don't want a mother-in-law. But on the other hand, would it be fair on your part if somebody then prays that your own mom should be dead because they are scared that, so... But this issue of mother,
because it really becomes, I feel like sometimes people come in already like, oh, if my mother-in-law should do this, I'm going to give her this, or if my sister-in-law should disrespect me, and they come in with all of that, I don't know, resentment and bitterness even before something has happened. So the first mistake somebody makes, they're already like, yeah, that's it, that's the attitude I'm talking about. You're not going to do that with me, and all of this. We're not very. Yeah, so then it becomes a vicious cycle, because then you become that person to your, like Jumoke was saying, to your own sons. When they bring their wives, you're already like, oh, this is going to be my enemy. It's going to take my affection and all of these things away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, with in-laws, I believe that we all need grace.
Yes, we do. Yes,
and
we
wisdom.
Need to see we need to see, like, if somebody comes into your family as a new person, if you're maybe married to your brother or married to your sister as a brother-in-law or sister-in-law, treat them like you would treat your own siblings, because you don't always get along with your siblings. You get on each other's nerves, you fight, but you have a bond, you love each other, and that's the same thing that you should extend to your in-law. That respect and respect the space. I remember we were talking about this last week with some friends, and we were like, okay, do you get into your siblings' marital issues? I'm like, no, I don't get into that. We interact as, I don't get into people's issues.
Yeah.
Because it's not my place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's very important, isn't it? That you give them that space to make their mistakes and learn. Because you don't want them to feel anytime you're around, you're poke nosing into what you're not. You have to be very careful. You have to be very, very careful. And
no matter how much you love your brother or your sister, you're not in covenant with them. It is their wife or their husband that is in covenant with them. Their spouses that are in covenant with them. You're not in a covenant with them. So your relationship has to take a backseat. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah, and I think you just keep the relationship open and being there so that they know that you're reachable.
Yeah, they can rely on you.
Not too much in their space, but they know that okay, at least you're reachable. They can rely on you. They can trust you.
They
at
can
least,
talk to you.
Yeah, they can talk to you.
Yeah, and treat people the way you would want your in-laws to treat you.
Oh,
isn't
exactly.
It?
Oh,
Exactly.
yes. Oh,
Exactly.
yes.
That's something I always have at the back of my mind. The way I would want to be treated is the way I would treat my brother's wife. Because
yeah. Oh,
exactly.
And I
want
it's we are the ones that can break the cycle, because if we do treat each other and have each other's backs, we're hoping that the kids that we are raising will do the same thing, and this cycle of scary mother-in-law will be broken now. Like, be much better going forward.
Definitely. Wow. Stay tuned. The conversation continues in the next episode of Intentional Randomness, and you don't want to miss the concluding part of this chat. I'm sure you don't want to miss it. Hey, so if you're wondering which show we were talking about, it was Blue Therapy. It aired on YouTube some weeks ago, and even though now there have been a lot of talks about if the show was scripted or if it was real, I just want to say that it didn't really matter to us having this conversation, because we wanted to raise some of the issues and not so much if the show was real or not, because it doesn't even matter if it was a movie. Those were very valid issues that we wanted to talk about. Yeah, so I just wanted to say that. I am sure you have enjoyed listening to this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram on our handle Intentional Randomness, and feel free to contact us on intentionalrandomnessfeedback@gmail.com. Until next time, be intentional.